In the heart of a stormy night, I found him, abandoned and shivering. The little puppy fit snugly in my arms. Just hours later, a routine vet visit shattered my world. The vet revealed he was not just any stray, but my long-lost son, stolen at birth. The truth struck like lightning. How could my own family betray me so cruelly? As the pieces of a shattered life fell into place, I realized I had not only rescued a puppy, but the very heartbeat of my past. My name is Benjamin. I will stop at nothing to reclaim what was stolen from me. As I stood in the dimly lit veterinary office, the weight of the revelation crushed down on me. The puppy, with its soulful eyes and gentle whimpers, had unknowingly become the tether between my present and a fractured past I had tried so hard to forget. My mind raced, recalling the arguments, the silent treatments, and the final bitter words exchanged with Daniel when we last saw each other. I had thought those days were behind me. But now they lurked in the shadows, ready to pounce with renewed vigor. Emily, always my rock, sensed my turmoil. Her hand found mine, squeezing it gently as if to anchor me to the present. I could see the worry etched on her face, her own doubts swirling like leaves caught in a storm. "Benjamin, are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice a lifeline amid the chaos brewing in my head. I wanted to reassure her that everything would be fine, that this puppy would bring us closer together, not pull us apart. But I knew the truth was more complicated than that. "Emily, this changes everything," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy with the implications of my brother's return. Daniel is going to want him back. He has every right to. The thought of losing the puppy, the first creature to bring light into my home in ages, felt like a raw wound. Yet I couldn't ignore the strings of family loyalty that tugged at my heart, urging me to do what was right. The reality of my brother's presence rattled me. Daniel had always been the wild one, the one who chased after dreams without considering the consequences. When he had left, it felt like a door had slammed shut, sealing away all the warmth of our shared childhood. I had tried to convince myself that it was for the best, that some relationships were too toxic to maintain. But now, standing at the crossroads of past and present, I wondered if my resolve had been too rigid. A soft cough interrupted my spiraling thoughts, and I turned to see Mia, the veterinarian, approaching us with a clipboard in hand. Her expression was serious, her brow furrowed as she glanced back at the puppy, who was now curled up against my leg. "Benjamin, there's something else you need to know," she said, her tone grave. My heart sank further, fearing the worst. "The puppy has a microchip. It's registered to Daniel." I swallowed hard, the truth striking me like a physical blow. The feeling of possession I had grown so fond of over the past days shattered. It felt like an intimate betrayal, as if the bond I had begun to forge with this creature was built on a foundation of sand. Emily's grip tightened on my hand as she processed the information. "You mean he really is Daniel's?" she asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Yes," Mia confirmed, her gaze shifting between us. "He's been missing for over a year. I can contact Daniel for you if you'd like." The suggestion hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in an olive branch. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on my chest. I looked at Emily, searching for a sign of what to do next. Would reuniting this puppy with its rightful owner mean letting go of something that had started to feel like family? My heart ached at the thought, but deep down, I knew what was right. "No," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. "I think it's best if I speak to Daniel myself." The drive home was a blur, the roads passing by in a haze as I wrestled with my thoughts. The puppy nestled in the back seat, unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. Emily sat quietly beside me, her presence a comforting balm, though I could feel her tension. "Are you sure about this?" she eventually asked, breaking the silence. "Yes, I need to face him," I replied, though my own uncertainty echoed in my words. The thought of confronting Daniel filled me with dread, but I could no longer allow fear to dictate my actions. The puppy deserved a home, and Daniel deserved closure. I realized that if I were ever to heal our relationship, I had to be the one to reach out. When we arrived home, the atmosphere felt different, charged with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. I carefully unbuckled the puppy and held him close, the warmth of his small body providing a momentary comfort. Emily watched as I paced the living room, my mind racing with scenarios of how our confrontation might unfold. What would I say? How would Daniel react? As I gathered the courage to pick up my phone and call him, my heart thudded against my ribs. I was about to open a floodgate of emotions that had been dammed up for years. Daniel's number was still saved in my contacts, an indication of the hope I'd clung to. With a deep breath, I pressed call, the sound of the ringing filling the silence. When his voice finally answered, it was like a ghost from the past materializing before me. "Benjamin?" he said, disbelief coloring his tone. The years of separation were palpable, and I could feel my resolve wavering. "Is that really you?" "Yeah, it's me," I replied, each word heavy with the weight of our history. "We need to talk. About the puppy." There was a moment of silence on the other end, thick with the years of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I could hear Daniel draw in a shaky breath. "You found him?" "Yes," I confirmed, my heart racing. "And I think we need to meet." As I spoke those words, I knew that I was standing on the precipice of change. The next moments would shape not only our futures, but also the life of the little creature nestled in my arms. The puppy had unwittingly woven our destinies together, and I could only hope it would lead us toward healing. As I paced the living room, the weight of my decision hung heavily in the air. Emily watched me from the couch, her eyes filled with concern and curiosity. "Benjamin, are you sure about this? Reaching out to Daniel after all these years, it could open up old wounds." Her voice was calm, yet I could hear the tremor of worry beneath it. "I know," I replied, rubbing the back of my neck, trying to shake off the tension that had settled there. "But this puppy, he's brought all these feelings to the surface. I can't just ignore that he belongs to Daniel. It's not fair to him or to us." I glanced down at the small bundle of fur asleep on my lap, completely unaware of the storm brewing in our lives. Emily sighed, shifting her gaze toward the window, where the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. "I just want to protect you. You and Daniel have a complicated history. What if this only makes things worse?" Her words rang true, and I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. "I have to try, Em. We owe it to the puppy, but also to ourselves," I insisted, my resolve beginning to strengthen. "I can't keep running away from my past. This could be a chance to finally address everything between us." With a reluctant nod, Emily stood up and walked over, placing her hand on my shoulder. "Then we'll face it together. Just remember, Daniel may not have changed." Her concern lingered in the air, but I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, a chance for reconciliation I had long given up on. That night, I drafted a message to Daniel, my fingers hovering over the screen as memories flooded my mind, faded laughter and a shared childhood that felt like a lifetime ago. After what felt like an eternity, I pressed send, the weight of the decision lifting as the message vanished into the ether. Days passed, each one stretching out like the last. I found myself distracted, more attuned to the puppy's playful antics than the reality of waiting for Daniel's response. He was a bundle of energy, and watching him explore our living room, his tail wagging furiously, reminded me that sometimes joy could be found in the simplest things. But in the back of my mind, I knew that the real joy would come if Daniel would agree to meet. Then, on a quiet Thursday morning, my phone chimed with a notification that sent my heart racing. It was Daniel. My hands shook slightly as I opened the message, the tension palpable in the air. He agreed to meet, but I could sense an underlying hesitation in his words. He wanted to see the puppy, and part of me felt that this encounter could either unravel years of pain or begin a healing process. As the day approached, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. I replayed countless scenarios in my head, imagining how the meeting would unfold. Would Daniel be angry? Would he lash out, blaming me for the years lost? I shared my concerns with Emily, who listened intently as I voiced my fears. "Just be honest with him, Benjamin," she encouraged. "He's your brother. No matter what has happened, there's still a bond there, even if it's frayed." Her words stuck with me, a reminder that amidst the hurt, love still existed. When the day finally arrived, I found myself standing in front of a small cafe, the designated meeting place, my heart racing. I was early, anxiety gnawing at my insides like a persistent ache. The sun shone brightly overhead, but I felt a chill creeping into my bones. A few minutes later, I saw Daniel approaching, his silhouette familiar yet foreign. Time had etched lines into his face, but the familiar glint of mischief in his eyes remained unchanged. I held my breath, unsure of how to greet him. When our eyes met, there was an awkward moment of hesitation before I broke the silence. "Daniel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Benjamin," he replied, his tone cautious. We exchanged a stiff hug, the embrace feeling more like a formality than a genuine greeting. I gestured for him to sit at a small table outside, where the sun warmed the air, but my heart remained cold with uncertainty. As we settled in, I couldn't help but notice the tension lingering between us. Daniel glanced around, seemingly avoiding eye contact. "So, I heard you found Max," he finally said, a hint of nostalgia creeping into his voice. "Yes, he's here," I replied, pulling out the small tuppy from my bag. I set him on the table, and he wagged his tail, oblivious to the weight of our family history. The sight of the puppy seemed to soften Daniel's demeanor, a flicker of joy crossing his face as he reached out to pet him. "God, I missed him," Daniel murmured, his voice thick with emotion. It was a small crack in the wall he'd built up over the years, and I seized the moment. "Max needs us, Daniel, but I think we need to talk about what happened, about us," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Daniel's expression shifted, the joyful light fading as he pulled back, an invisible barrier rising between us once more. "I don't want to relive the past," he said, his tone defensive. "It's not just about the past, it's about moving forward. We can't just ignore everything anymore," I pleaded, hoping to reach the brother I once knew. For a moment, the silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. I watched as Daniel wrestled with his thoughts, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. Finally, he sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping. "I don't know if I can," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice catching me off guard. "We can try, together," I offered, my heart racing as I reached across the table, letting my hand rest on his. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental, a tentative bridge being built in the space between us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over our table, the puppy curled up between us, a living testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of healing. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope ignite, a hope that perhaps we could find a way back to each other, one step at a time. If you've enjoyed this journey of family, healing, and the unexpected paths life takes us on, consider subscribing for more stories that tug at the heartstrings. Together, we can explore the depths of love, forgiveness, and the bonds that tie us all together. As I sat in the waiting room of Mia's clinic, the air thick with anxiety, I couldn't shake the weight of Daniel's impending arrival. Emily sat beside me, her fingers tightly intertwined with mine, as if our connection was all that stood between me and an emotional collapse. The soft whimpers of the puppy beside me reminded me of the joy he had brought into our lives, but the reality of his true identity loomed over us like a dark cloud. I glanced at the little creature, a bundle of fur with wide, innocent eyes. He was blissfully unaware of the turmoil swirling around him, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. When Mia finally emerged, her expression was a blend of professionalism and compassion. She had always been a source of comfort, particularly for animals in distress, and I hoped she could do the same for me in this moment. "Benjamin," she said softly, "can we talk in my office?" My heart raced as I nodded, and I followed her down the sterile hallway, the scent of antiseptic filling my lungs. Inside her office, I took a seat on the small chair opposite her desk, my thoughts racing. "Is there anything else I should know about the puppy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's been missing for a long time, Benjamin," she began, "and he belongs to someone who is very attached to him." I swallowed hard, the realization hitting me that this wasn't just about a stray puppy anymore. It was about family ties, loyalty, and the bitter taste of betrayal. "Is it Daniel's?" I asked, fearing the answer. She nodded, and I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. "He's been searching for this puppy ever since he went missing. It's been hard on him." A mix of emotions surged within me. Anger at Daniel for leaving, sadness for the bond we had lost, and guilt for having inadvertently brought his pain back into our lives. "What do I do now?" I questioned, my voice breaking. Mia's gaze softened as she responded, "You must think about what this means for you and your family." Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest healing. I left her office feeling more conflicted than ever. As I stepped back into the waiting area, I found Emily's gaze searching mine, a silent question hanging in the air. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words to convey the revelation without the weight of despair. "It's Daniel's puppy," I finally said, the words heavy on my tongue. Emily's expression shifted, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. "What does that mean for us?" she asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. "It means he wants it back," I replied, my heart sinking further. "He's been looking for him all this time." I could feel the tension rising between us. Emily had always been wary of Daniel's return. "What if he just wants to take the puppy and disappear again?" she countered, her protective instincts flaring. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice filled with doubt. "But I can't ignore what this means for him, for us." I realized that I had been holding on to the puppy as a way to heal the void left by my brother's absence, yet I understood that by doing so, I might have unwittingly deepened the rift between us. We decided to take the puppy home for now, to give ourselves time to process everything. As we entered our house, the small creature bounced around, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside us. Emily knelt down to scratch behind his ears, a smile breaking through the tension. "He's going to need a name," she said lightly, trying to lift the mood. "Maybe we should ask Daniel what he called him," I suggested, unsure of how to approach the topic when the time came. Emily nodded, though her smile faded as reality set back in. "We can't ignore what's happening, Benjamin. It's going to be difficult, and we need to be prepared for whatever comes next." The following days were a blur of emotions. I felt torn between my loyalty to Daniel and my attachment to the puppy, who had brought so much joy to our lives. Each time I looked at him, I was reminded of the warmth of family and the emptiness that came with loss. Emily's doubts lingered like a shadow over our home, and I sensed the tension growing with each passing moment. Then, out of the blue, Daniel showed up at our doorstep, his presence like a storm cloud overhead. My heart raced as I opened the door, revealing the man I hadn't seen in years. "Benjamin," he said, his voice low and cautious, "can we talk?" I glanced back at Emily, who stood behind me, her expression a mixture of apprehension and resolve. "Sure," I managed, stepping aside to let him in. The atmosphere felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. The puppy scampered into the living room, oblivious to the brewing conflict, and I could see Daniel's eyes soften at the sight. "Is that?" he began, and I knew there was no turning back now. "Yes, it's your puppy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel knelt down, and the little creature rushed into his arms. It was a bittersweet moment watching the reunion unfold, but I could see the deeper emotions swirling in Daniel's gaze. The bond between them was palpable, and I knew that despite the distance we had put between ourselves, the love for family still flickered in the background. "Why did you leave?" I finally asked, my frustration spilling over. "You just vanished without a word." Daniel sighed, the weight of his choices evident in his demeanor. "I thought it was for the best, Benjamin. I was struggling, and I didn't want to drag you down with me." "Did you think running away would solve anything?" I replied, my voice rising. "We needed each other, but you chose to disappear." The tension hung between us, thick and unyielding. Emily stepped in, her voice calm yet firm. "This isn't just about you two anymore. You need to figure out how to move forward, for the puppy's sake and your own." In that moment, as the puppy settled into Daniel's lap, I realized we were at a crossroads. The future of our family lay in the balance, and perhaps this little creature was the bridge we needed to cross it. The potential for healing was there, but it would take vulnerability, honesty, and a willingness to face the past. I took a deep breath, ready to take the first step. The atmosphere in the living room shifted as Daniel cradled the puppy, a mix of tenderness and hesitation in his expression. I could see the flicker of memories in his eyes, those moments when the puppy had once been a part of his life, a bond that had been severed by choices neither of us had fully understood at the time. Emily stood behind me, her presence a comforting anchor as I moved closer to the brothers, uncertain but hopeful. "How have you been, Daniel?" I finally managed to ask, breaking the silence that hung in the air like a heavy fog. The question felt loaded, a delicate thread woven into the fabric of our history, and I braced myself for his response. He hesitated, the weight of my inquiry clearly pressing down on him. "I've been figuring things out," he replied, his voice steady yet distant. It was the sort of answer that begged for deeper conversation, but also shielded him from the vulnerability that would come with it. I could sense that he was holding back, just as I had done for years. The puppy, oblivious to the tension surrounding it, wagged its tail in an innocent display of joy, a stark contrast to our emotional turmoil. Emily stepped forward, her concern for both Daniel and the puppy evident. "You know, it's been a long time since we've seen each other, Daniel. Maybe we should talk about what happened." I could see the determination in her eyes, a silent plea for reconciliation. I admired her bravery, and as I glanced at Daniel, I hoped he would take the bait. "Yeah, maybe we should," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was a small victory, one that encouraged me. Perhaps this was the moment we could begin to unpack the bitterness that had tainted our relationship for so long. I looked down at the puppy, now nestled snugly against Daniel's chest. It was as if the small creature sensed the heaviness between us, its playful demeanor both a balm and a reminder of our shared past. "What's his name?" I asked, directing my question at Daniel, my heart pounding with the urgency of the moment. "His name was Max," Daniel replied, a soft smile breaking through the tension. "He was my best friend. I loved him like family." His words seemed to soften the sharp edges of our estrangement, evoking images of a happier time before the rift had torn us apart. I could see it in his eyes. Max had been more than just a pet. He had been a lifeline during the darkest days of his life. "Do you remember how we used to take him to the park?" I ventured, trying to reignite the warmth of those memories. "He would chase after the ball, barking like a madman." As I spoke, I was transported back to those moments, the laughter and the joy that had once defined our family outings. Daniel nodded, his expression softening further. "Yeah, I remember. He had so much energy." There was a nostalgia in his voice that gave me hope. The shared memories felt like stepping stones, guiding us back to a connection we thought irretrievably lost. But then Emily's voice broke in, and I could sense her internal struggle. "Daniel, why did you leave? we never understood what happened. Her question hung in the air, raw and unguarded. I admired her courage, but I also feared the potential backlash. His gaze dropped to the floor, shadows flickering across his face. There were things I was dealing with, stuff that made it hard to be around. I thought it was best for everyone if I just disappeared. His admission was heavy, filled with unspoken regrets. The room grew quiet, the weight of his words settling over us like a heavy blanket. I wanted to reach out, to tell him that we had missed him, that I had missed him, but the fear of rejection held me back. I glanced at Emily, who was clearly wrestling with her emotions, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Did you ever think about how we felt? About how your leaving affected us? Emily's voice quivered slightly, revealing the hurt that had lingered over the years. I could sense the rising tension, but I also felt a spark of understanding. Daniel had his demons, but so did we. I did, he said quietly, the pain evident in his voice. But I was so consumed by my own issues that I couldn't see how it was hurting you. The admission was a breakthrough, and I could feel the air around us shift. It was a start, a fragile first step towards healing. Just then, Mia, the veterinarian, entered the room, her presence a welcome distraction. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, glancing at the puppy in Daniel's arms with a smile. "I just wanted to check on little Max. He seems to be fitting right in." Her observation broke the tension, and I chuckled softly, appreciating her timing. "He truly does," I said, feeling a renewed sense of hope. Max had a way of bringing us together even in the midst of our turmoil. Mia looked at Daniel, her expression warm. "It seems like he's found his way home. You know, sometimes animals can help us heal the wounds we didn't even realize we had." Her insight was profound, hitting me squarely in the chest. The puppy wasn't just a reminder of our past, it was an opportunity for us to rebuild our future. As I watched Daniel stroke the puppy's fur, I saw something shift within him. There was a flicker of vulnerability, a desire to reconnect that echoed my own. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Perhaps we could finally begin to mend the fractures that had kept us apart for so long. "Let's take him to the park tomorrow," I suggested, feeling a surge of optimism. It could be a good way for all of us to start fresh. I could feel Emily's support behind me, her belief in the possibility of healing fueling my courage. Daniel looked up, a hint of a smile crossing his face. "Yeah, I'd like that." With that simple agreement, I felt the first threads of reconciliation weaving their way through our family. It was a long road ahead, but with Max leading the way, I dared to believe that we could find our way back to each other. As I sat there, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within me. The lightness of newfound hope mixed with the weight of the past that still loomed heavily over our family. The air in the room crackled with unspoken words, memories that had been buried deep in the shadows. Daniel and I exchanged glances filled with a mixture of apprehension and tentative optimism. I could feel my heart racing, not just from the uncertainty of our relationship, but also from the joy that Max, the puppy we had just rescued, had unexpectedly become a bridge between us. Emily noticed the shift in the atmosphere, the tension slowly dissipating. "Maybe we should take Max for a walk," she suggested, her voice soft but encouraging. "It could give us a chance to talk more without the pressure of being inside." Her suggestion, simple yet profound, felt like a lifeline, pulling us out of the heaviness of our conversation. I nodded, grateful for her intuition, and Daniel followed suit, his brow slightly furrowed but willing to take the first step. As we stepped outside, the crisp air embraced us, washing over the remnants of doubt. Max seemed to sense the change, bounding ahead with an exuberance that was infectious. Watching him, I couldn't help but smile. He was a small, scruffy ball of energy, and his innocent curiosity reminded me of the times when Daniel and I would play together in our childhood backyard. I recalled the laughter, the carefree days before life had complicated our relationship. "Do you remember when we got into that massive mud fight?" I asked, glancing over at Daniel. A smile broke through his serious demeanor. Yeah, Mom was furious, he replied, a hint of nostalgia threading through his words. I felt a flicker of warmth between us, a shared moment that momentarily erased the years of silence and hurt. It was as if Max had opened a door to a past we had both tried to forget. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and I watched Max dart around, chasing fallen leaves as if they were the most thrilling of prey. It struck me that our lives had been much like those leaves, caught in storms, drifting apart, and yet somehow finding our way back to ground zero. I turned to Daniel, who stood a few paces behind, a contemplative look on his face. "We can't change what happened, but maybe we can start fresh," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he processed my words, a mix of skepticism and hope flickering within them. "You don't know how hard it's been for me, Ben. I felt alone for so long." I could see the vulnerability in his posture, and it made my chest tighten with empathy. "I can't imagine what you've been through. I know I messed up too. We both did." I took a step toward him, my heart pounding as I reached out to bridge the gap that had kept us apart for years. "But I want to try. For Max, for us." He inhaled deeply, and for a moment, the world around us faded. "I don't want to go back to where we were," he confessed, a mixture of anger and sadness evident in his voice. "But I don't want to stay stuck either." I nodded, feeling the same weight in my chest. "Then let's not go back. Let's move forward together, even if it's just one step at a time." As we continued our walk, I could sense the tension easing. With each step, the shadows of our past began to recede, giving way to the light of possibility. Max bounded back to us, plopping down in the grass, his tongue lolling out happily. In that moment, I realized that he wasn't just a puppy we rescued. He was a catalyst for change, a reminder that love and connection could blossom even in the most unexpected circumstances. Emily caught up with us, her smile warm and reassuring. "What are you two talking about?" she asked, her eyes glinting with curiosity. "Just reminiscing about old times," I replied, sharing a glance with Daniel, who seemed to be processing everything we had discussed. "And maybe making some new memories," Daniel added, his voice steady, a hint of a smile returning to his lips. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the landscape, I felt a renewed sense of hope. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I could see a flicker of light breaking through the clouds. I knew there would be challenges, but with Emily's unwavering support and Max's innocent joy, I believed we could navigate this new chapter together. After our walk, we returned home, the atmosphere filled with the warmth of laughter and the scent of dinner cooking. As we settled around the table, I glanced at Daniel, who now seemed more at ease, less burdened by the weight of our shared history. "So, what do you think about having Max officially as part of our family?" I asked, a playful grin on my face. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "You know I'm not good with commitments," he replied teasingly. "But maybe I could help with some training." Emily and I exchanged smiles, feeling that familiar laughter resonate through our home, reminding me of what family truly meant. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself contemplating the power of forgiveness and the beauty of second chances. It was clear that our journey was far from over, but Max had ignited a spark within us, one that I hoped would help heal the wounds of our past. I resolved to keep nurturing this new beginning, not just for myself, but for Daniel, Emily, and Max. As I drifted into sleep, I remembered how stories of hope could inspire others to confront their own challenges. If you have a story of reconciliation or a moment that changed your life, I invite you to share it. Sometimes, the bonds of love and forgiveness can lead to the most unexpected and beautiful transformations. As dawn broke, I felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through me. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating the room in a warm glow, and I glanced over at Emily, still asleep beside me. I knew that today would be pivotal. The weight of Daniel's presence loomed over us, and I could almost hear the ticking clock reminding me of the conversation we needed to have. The return of my brother had stirred something deep within me, an old wound that had begun to scab over but was now raw again. I rose quietly, careful not to wake Emily, and padded softly to the kitchen. Max, the puppy, was curled up in his bed, his little body rising and falling with each breath. I knelt beside him, gently scratching behind his ears. He looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. And for a moment, the chaos of the past few days faded away. I knew that, in Max, there was a bridge to my brother, a link to a past that felt distant, yet achingly familiar. It was strange how this little creature could embody so much: hope, regret, and the possibility of forgiveness. I realized that he might very well be the catalyst that could mend the fractures in our family. After a quick cup of coffee, I decided to take Max for a walk to clear my head. The fresh morning air felt invigorating as I stepped outside, and I inhaled deeply, letting the sounds of the neighborhood wash over me. It was a typical morning: children playing, birds chirping, and neighbors exchanging pleasantries. But my mind was occupied with thoughts of Daniel and the choices that had led us to this point. As I walked, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. I needed to confront my brother, not just for him, but for my own peace of mind. When I returned home, Emily was awake. Sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, the concern etched on her face was palpable. "How are you feeling about Daniel?" she asked, her voice soft yet probing. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think it's time we talk," I finally replied, "not just about Max, but about everything." Emily nodded, her expression shifting from concern to support. "I'll be here for you, whatever happens." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced as I glanced at Emily, who gave me a reassuring nod. I opened the door to find Daniel standing there, his expression unreadable. There was an awkward silence between us, a chasm filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "Hey," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, allowing him in, and closed the door behind us. The air inside was thick with tension. I gestured for him to sit at the table, and he did, his gaze flickering to Max, who was now wagging his tail at the sight of his old owner. "He looks happy," Daniel said, and for a moment I could see a glimpse of the brother I once knew. "I've missed him." I took a deep breath, feeling the urge to say everything I had bottled up for years. "I've missed you too, but it's not just about Max. There's so much more we need to address." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I know. I came back because I wanted to try to make things right." His admission surprised me. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "I've had a lot of time to reflect," he said, his eyes lowering. "I made mistakes, and I hurt you and the family. I want to apologize, truly." I felt a flicker of something. Was it hope, or was it skepticism born from years of resentment? "I don't want to relive the past," I replied, feeling the walls I had built around myself start to shake. "But I need to understand why you left in the first place." Daniel looked up, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. "It was complicated. I thought I could escape my responsibilities. I thought distancing myself would protect you from my problems, but I only hurt you more." His honesty was disarming, and I could feel my resolve softening. I glanced over at Emily, who was listening intently from her spot at the counter, offering her silent support. "It's not just about the past, Daniel. It's also about moving forward. We can't just pretend that everything is fine." He nodded, and the weight of the moment hung heavily in the air. "I want to be part of your life again, but I need to earn your trust back. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." As the conversation unfolded, it felt like we were both navigating a minefield of emotions, but this time there was a sense of mutual understanding. Max, ever the innocent bystander, moved between us. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere and attempting to bridge the gap with his playful antics. Each wag of his tail seemed to encourage us to keep talking, to keep revealing our vulnerabilities. Hours later, after diving deep into our shared past, we found ourselves laughing about old memories, the heaviness of our initial confrontation giving way to a budding camaraderie. It was a small, tentative step, but it felt monumental. With Max at our feet, we made a silent pact to work on our relationship, to confront the hurt that had festered for too long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, I felt a sense of hope enveloping us. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, it seemed possible. And it all started with a stray puppy and a willingness to forgive.